Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for this session, which is going to be about renewables made in Europe. We have representatives from the wind sector, the solar sector, and the ocean energy sector, which is, in this case, wave energy. This session is about maintaining the leadership in renewables, which is crucial to reach our energy transition objectives, to ensure economic growth, to strengthen energy security, which has become one of the key topics in the last few years. But increasing competition from other regions, other countries, is threatening that to a certain extent, or has already had competitive impacts. And the objective of the session is a bit to explore how we can secure Europe's position as a key manufacturer of renewables, as a place where energy security is guaranteed by the fact that the resource is local, the manufacturing is local, and we don't need to import so much from outside. The representatives we have are from the European Commission. So I have Jacek Truczynski with us, who is the Deputy Head of Unit for the Net Zero Industry and Sustainable Products from DG GROW. I have Francesca Fabris in green, who is the European Projects Manager for Futurason, which is a PV module manufacturer. I have Luis de la Fortelle, who is the Senior Policy Advisor at ZF Group, which is a company manufacturing gearboxes and drivetrains for wind turbines. And Eunice Silva, who is the the Technical Project Manager for Core Power, who is a wave energy developer manufacturing machines in Sweden and Portugal. Victoria Kierelska, who is the Director for Advocacy and Messaging at Wind Europe. And finally, Carmen Carreras Lopez, who's the Policy Advisor for Solar Power Europe. So essentially you have a mix, I mean, you have obviously our Commission partners, but you have a mix of industries and you have a mix between trade representations and actual companies dealing with real projects and real things. So to launch the session, I want to mention a few figures because we have in renewables, we have a target for 42.5% in the Renewable Energy Directive, 45% non-binding. And that means roughly 60 to 70% for electricity production around those lines. And today, we are roughly at 44% for 2023 of European consumption coming from renewables. So it's just a bit to set the themes with a few figures so that we know where we are. Going forward, 70 to 76% by 2050 is what Bloomberg is estimating will happen with existing policies, so without further changes. 86% is the same estimate for 2050 globally from IRENA. So again, depending on the hypothesis in your studies. But essentially, very high penetrations of renewables by mid-century is what's expected by everybody today. Another figure, 90%, that's the overall support for renewables from the public. And I wanted to mention that one because we hear a lot about NIMBY, about the fact that projects are getting challenged. But the overall support, when it's not directly in your backyard, is actually very good. And it's better for any renewables across the board of this panel than with any other energy technologies. And finally, a figure that came out last week or this week from the IEA, 200%, which is the amount of global investments into clean energy compared to fossil energy. And it is the first time that the world is investing twice as much in clean energy and it is investing in fossil energy, which I take to be a fantastic news. Now, we can get to a very high penetration of renewables, but we could also import everything. So again, the focus of this session will be a bit to focus on the last figure, which is this 40% manufacturing in the EU, which has been put forward by Jacek and his colleagues as part of the NZIA legislation or communication. And it's a target for manufacturing of key technologies. So with that, I'll hope the figures give you a few ideas of where we're going to be. And Jacek, I'm going to give you the floor for a first keynote. You can take Eunice, maybe the mic that you have.
Thanks.
And you can come here, you can sit, well, whatever you want.
Maybe I'll just stay here.
Okay.
Is it working? Yeah? Okay. Well, thanks a lot. Thanks for your invitation today. You mentioned a few figures, so let me also start with that. Indeed, we have the 40% objective. We have the 40% objective in the Net Zero Industry Act. it has been put by the Commission forward, but it has been now actually endorsed by the European Parliament and the Council, and the Net Zero Industry Act will enter into force at the end of this month. And 40% might seem a little bit abstract, so it's useful to then translate it into what it specifically means for individual technologies. And what it means is that, for example, for wind, we have to scale up by a factor 3 the manufacturing capacity by 2030. For batteries, between 7 and 8. For solar, more than 20. Because the demand will increase, and we want to ensure that manufacturing follows the demand trend. So this is very ambitious, but we believe that we are putting in place the framework that will hopefully enable the transition. And just a few words about what are the main elements and what we will be focusing on right now as part of this policy effort. I would say that in the Net Zero Industry Act there's a number of very hard, concrete provisions, and then there's a number of more soft measures. Mm-hmm. And for the hard provisions, it's above all the access to markets provisions, so those provisions that will put an obligation on public authorities to factor in so-called resilience criteria and other non-price criteria in all basically publicly framed schemes. So here we talk about public procurement, we talk about auctions for green power, including hydrogen, and we talk about support schemes, for example, subsidies to households to buy heat pumps or solar PV for their roofs. And the challenge we have right now is that we have to come up relatively quickly. So within 9 months, counting from today, basically, with implementing acts that will specify how concretely this is to be done. And this is a difficult task because on the one hand, we have to be very specific, we have to be very practical, because the obligations will apply also to, for example, small schools that will be buying this equipment. So it has to be operational, but at the same time it has to be flexible, because we hear from the industry, for example from the wind industry, do not put obligations on each and every component that will be put forward as part of the wind deployment. So we will have to strike the right balance there. Then we have the permitting provisions, which are also very specific, and I'm happy to say that already a number of member states, Germany, France, notably, are putting in place legislation that will radically simplify those processes. Then coming to the soft provisions, here a lot will depend on how much effort we, the Commission, member states, and the industry will be willing to put into it to make a success. And here I talk about the notion of the net zero strategic projects. So already as of next month, we will be encouraging member states to start putting in place a system for granting project promoters the status of so-called strategic net zero strategic projects. What it means specifically is that for those projects, project promoters will have a even faster permitting, but also a simplified access to finance. And of course, there was a lot of criticism when we put forward the Net Zero Industry Act that there's no dedicated budget for that. And it's true. That being said, if you look at what is out there as potential sources of funding, it's quite a lot. For example, under the temporary state aid framework, as much as 14 billion euros has been approved by DG Competition for schemes specifically targeting net zero technology manufacturing. So we have to link all those things: strategic projects, planned schemes at member states level, what remains of structural funds, what is planned under the Innovation Fund, and so on. So this will be a task for us. There's also in terms of soft measures, this notion of net zero strategic valleys, net zero valleys, and there's a big potential for supporting clusters of net zero industries in Europe. We know that it works quite well. I think China, basically, also that was one of the ways China built its capacity, its strength on world markets in those technologies. So we have to also learn from that. So yeah, to sum up, implementation will be key, and a close cooperation with all of those sectors will be very important to make it effective. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, very clear. And So moving forward, I'll ask our three industry representatives to present a bit what they're doing. We have a presentation for each. I believe we'll start with the first presentation, if I can have it on screen. Okay, it's ZF. So Louise, you have only one slide, so I can keep this, yes. But I'll give you the floor.
Yes, I hope the microphone works. Yes, thank you. So my name is Louise de la Fortelle. I work for ZF Wind Power. And ZF Wind Power is one of the leaders in the production and design of gearboxes for the wind sector. And so a gearbox is basically the component that transforms the slow rotation in the blades into very fast rotations in the generator. So we are a key component of a wind turbine. We have a very long history of producing wind gearbox. We are active in the wind sector since 45 years here in Europe. Our headquarters are in Belgium, actually, in Lommel, where we have also our main R&D center. And over our 45 years of activity, we have geared over 80,000 turbines all over the world, which represents energy production of 180 gigawatts, which powers 150 million inhabitants all over the globe. And in the future, we are also assembling powertrains, so we are incorporating new components within our portfolio.
Thank you very much. Very clear. Congratulations. That's a lot of turbines. That's a good view of the wind supply chain. Can we have the next presentation? That's wave power, so I'll give Eunice the floor, and you can use the clicker as well.
Let's see if I can do everything at the same time. Clicker and microphone. All right. So, hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eunice Silva. I'm a project manager at Core Power Ocean. We are a company based in Sweden, and we produce wave energy converters. So let's start with the first slide. Oh, sorry. Oh, we should not have sound.
Can we cut the sound?
Can you cut the sound, please, of the video? Perfect. Thank you. And if you can have it on the screen, and then I'll talk over it. You can see it on the other side. Okay. Okay, so we are on a mission to power the planet with clean electricity from ocean waves. Wave energy has been being developed over the last decades, and we have now proven with the commercial scale kit, we have proven the technology, and we have implemented supply chain for manufacturing the devices, assembling the devices, and also installing the devices. We have proved the technology in Portugal, so we have now powered the grid in Portugal, and we have proven operations and maintenance. Okay, so now I see the video on that side. That's okay. So you've seen it on the other side. Okay.
It's synchronized now.
Perfect. So then I can continue with the presentation. Oh. Okay. So the role that wave can have is the wave can be a part of stabilizing the energy production, meaning that you can use the stabilizing factor of wave combined with other renewable energy sources to stabilize the grid. So you can have less production, less storage capacity, and also being that you have a stable 100% renewable energy production that is helped by wave combined with other renewable energies, so we can have the 24/7 carbon-free energy to power the grid. I think the next slide is also a video. Let's see if this one is going to work.
It's working on the other side.
Perfect. So I can explain how our wave energy converters work. So it's basically, we have modular units. So we have several wave energy converters combined together, which are combined in core packs. So what you see in the video is a core pack. There is made out of several wave energy converters combined together. There are about 25 wave energy converters to make the building block of our core packs, which are about 10 to 30 megawatt capacity, and then they can be combined together side by side to reach the big, large-scale capacity of hundreds of megawatts to gigawatt scale, so that we can power the grid and do utility-scale production of energy. our wave energy converters have one particular capacity, which is we have a composite buoy that you can see on the outside, that it's built with a mobile factory. So those mobile factories can be deployed to the location where you're actually building the farm, and then you can use local supply chain, and you can build this composite capacity at the location where you're building the farm. And building all of these buoys at the location removes the need to having to transport them over shipping over large distances, so also reducing the CO2 emissions and also increasing the production capacity around the location where the farms are built. So the next thing that I want to talk to you about is what we need. So in order for us to reach the 1 gigawatt by 2030 of the offshore renewable energy strategy and how ocean renewable energy can contribute to this, for WAVE we need CapEx and OpEx support. So to make the early stage commercial farms viable to investors, and also for that we need ring-fenced pot for offshore renewables in the Innovation Fund. That would create a lot of help for us. And the EU energy roadmap, we would like to have clear wave and tidal targets for the 2030, 40 and 50 aims, so that we can have a clearer goal. And something that is also very important for us is that the permitting processes on different sites to build the farms are under 3 years, so that we can have the commercial farms financed, and also we can move the process faster with site permitting and also grid permitting. If we can have this 1 gigawatt, then we can build this whole industry around the ocean renewable sector and create jobs, supply chain. There's a big opportunity for Europe to continue being a technology leader in ocean renewables, and also create being an industrial leader in ocean renewables, that we can supply then machines and equipment to a worldwide market. And I think if the pointer is working, not really. I don't think I have another slide, but okay. So there's the last slide. And what Core Power aims to have is to build wave farms that are standalone or combined with the wind sector, that you can have hybrid farms, meaning that you can produce energy combined with other renewable energies. Also, in our demonstrator project in Portugal, we have been working together with utilities and also oil and gas majors and other companies to understand how we can make the wave energies converters work, and how we can tap on this source of energy that it's the ocean waves. And we've seen also a lot of interest from off-takers that want to use our profile of production from the wave that it's stabilizing for to meet their capacities and to meet their goals of net zero.
Thank you very much. So you've seen a few pictures, so maybe now you know what a wave device looks like. It's one of the wave devices. There are other designs, but this is one of the most advanced ones. I will finish the industry presentations with Francesca for the PV side.
Okay, I'm Francesca, EU project manager for Futurasan. Futurasan, it's a company that produces solar modules. We were born in 2008 in Italy, where we have our headquarters, and we have our own production in China now. I'm trying to remember my slides. So the second slide was about all the milestones we reached in the last 18 months. 2 of them are in China, because we have 2 acquisitions of pieces of land for one more factory for PV module production, and one very big for 12 gigawatt of cell production. We have also an R&D development now in these years. We are participating to IBC for EU Horizon project, or here we are, Horizon project, and we have the first meeting in November 2022. In Italy, then, so in Europe, we acquired a piece of land to a factory, a PV module factory near our headquarters, that is in the northeast of Italy. For the first slide, I would like to underline our core values that are sustainability, R&D in an international cooperation way, and the expertise we have to build these high-quality modules. Yes, I can go on alone. Then we have an acquisition of a startup, Solertics, that was born inside the Tor Vergata University in Rome in June 2023. And in the same month, we have also a collaboration with ISC Constant that maybe someone of you know. It's a German research center, and the collaboration was about the IBC technology. Then in April, we work a lot also in 2023 to apply for Innovation Fund for the Fenice project. I was talking about a land in Italy. So that's where we want to build this factory for, it's not so big, but we really believe in that project. So 1.4 final capacity for module production with more than 500 jobs created, and a research centers and an academy to improve the skills that we are missing now. Talking about our presence in Europe, we are an Italian company, an European company, so we are trying to give our best to this association, Solar Power Europe, that invite us here, ESMC, and also the European Alliance for PV industry. With them, we are trying to bring the common point of view of all the actors in this sector to the European Commission. Very shortly, because I know that this is the topic for later, what we need to be present in Europe and to recreate, because we were there 10 years ago, the supply chain of PV in Europe, a strong and solid vision. I heard about that a lot in these days. So the Green Deal has to be in front of us, even after these elections. More support for the manufacturing, not only for the end users. I know that this is said a lot, but OPEX support, not only CAPEX support. Laws that are clear, stable in every member state, with a clear application of the directives, and an effective implementation of Net Zero Industry Act. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Francesca. Very clear. Indeed, we'll get back to some of these questions during the debate, which will start now. You have access to Slido, so if you want to use it to send us your questions, they should appear here on the pad, and I will be able to weave them into the debate. I have my own, and I will start with those. We have a few guiding questions from the session. And the first one, I'll start with the first one. Introducing myself, I'm Rémi Gruet. I'm the CEO of Ocean Energy Europe. I think I didn't mention that earlier. And I'll do my best to send you the right questions. So the first one is a bit, to set the scene a bit, is we've talked about resilience and about dependency. Where do we stand in each of the sectors? So maybe you can take it in pairs as couples for your respective technology. Solar, wind, ocean, how do we look? Where are we manufacturing today? What's happening? We've heard, obviously, modules in China, but is it the whole story? What's happening with wind? Are we diversifying and expanding geographically? And where are we with ocean? So I'll start with you, Victoria, if you like.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Rémi. Yeah, it's working right. Thank you, and good afternoon to everyone. So for the wind energy sector, to complement also a bit on what Louise was saying previously, from our perspective, the situation with our supply chain is that we have actually quite a big one still in Europe today. And I think this is something important to underline at the beginning of this very debate, because wind energy today, it covers already 90% of Europe's electricity. By 2050, we would need to cover more than half. This is according to European estimations. And basically our supply chain for wind energy, all the components that go into the turbines themselves, it's basically spread across 250 factories in every single country of the European Union. So it's really indeed quite a big one. And I'm actually very happy because just a few days ago, our colleagues from the European Technology and Innovation Platform updated the latest macroeconomic figures for our sector and our supply chain, which now allows me to give you, fresh out of the oven, basically what is our economic impact and what our supply chain represents. And it's basically more than 250 factories, more than 370,000 people who are working in the wind industry in Europe today. More than 57 billion of added value contribution to the European economy, 10 billion annual contribution also to local and national taxes that go to different municipalities and countries in Europe because we have supply chain and production in there. So basically, it's quite a very big success story for Europe that we want to keep growing and growing. As many of you know, of course, we have been through quite a few rough years in the past, notably because of the COVID crisis first, and then we had the war in Ukraine, which of course have put a certain strain on different supply chains. But in any case, what has happened, and I think this is very positive over the past years, is that the European Union, all the different sectors have really thought very carefully about what do we need on industrial policy for those technologies that would keep still Europe with a competitive edge in the world, because we still continue to be the #1 innovative leaders in wind technology in the world. And the Net Zero Industry Act was one very good first step in this direction, and we of course are going to talk into the nitty-gritty details. But nevertheless, from our perspective, the key is really to say, we have the supply chain here, we want to keep it, we want to grow it. I'm sure that we can get in there. Now we need to talk nitty-gritty details, and we need to focus really on the implementation, because a lot has gone out of the policy pipeline in the last 3 years, and basically now we need to make sure we implement it so that we get to the targets that Jacek was mentioning at the very beginning. I don't know, Liz, from your side, if you want to add upon me.
I can add 2 words, thank you. Yes, indeed. I mean, I can confirm only that it has been difficult years, that we have seen a certain of our customers cancelling some projects, which made it quite difficult for us. And of course, the competitiveness is a big question for us. But nevertheless, I think we should still say that in Europe, we are extremely competitive in wind. Next year, we will launch the largest serially produced wind turbine in the world with Vestas. So I think, and also we are still investing in Europe. We have enlarge our R&D center in Lommel. So this is also a sign of trust that we think that we have a future here. But indeed, and I think we will discuss it later, I think that in order to make this future become a reality, there are still a lot of actions we need to take at the European level.
Okay, that will be my next question. But first we'll go to Carmen, who can tell us a bit the state for the solar sector. Where are we with dependency?
Great. So that's a big question. As you all know, the situation for the solar supply chain is quite different. We're struggling quite a bit. I would like to make a difference between the PV itself and also something that's very important, which is the inverter. The PV itself has 5 steps in the supply chain: polysilicon, ingot, wafer, cell, and module. And we're struggling specifically for the ingot and wafer part. Why? Because it's very energy intensive. First, and maybe just to go through the inverter section. The inverter is the box that brings DC electricity into AC electricity. And we can say that we do have some factories on that in Europe, and we really want to keep them, and we really want to support them. We see there's a role for the IPCAs in this sense, and we're working together with some of our members so they can apply for IPCAs together with some member states. So hopefully the Commission will hear, because that's key. And then it's good that the inverters are connected to the Net Zero Industry Act, because then we can address the issues on the supply chain for PV itself. As I was saying, there's 5 steps, and here Net Zero is crucial. Basically, the Net Zero is saying that we need to have 30 gigawatts across the whole supply chain. We're kind of close to it in the polysilicon segment, but we're very far in ingots, wafer, cells, and modules. A bit closer maybe in modules than in the other 3. So we do trust that this resilience criteria, that environmental sustainability, we do think that this non-price criteria will help the industry to at least the one that we have stay alive with the idea of progressively reaching those 30 gigawatts. we do think that's possible. Maybe I can already bring some other ideas that we discuss and we think about when how to keep EU industries alive and how to maybe call investors to trust this. We see how there's a priority from the Commission in that sense, but maybe also member states could help already by their TCTF, right, the Temporary Crisis and Transition Framework. Here we see how many member states already have them approved for solar. Many TCTF schemes, we welcome that, but then in reality they don't manage to happen because there's many burden in the administrative issues. There's not quick access to it, and also because there's no sufficient OPEX under TCTF. So that's something we also ask the Commission maybe to revise and to modify, because indeed the main issue for the supply chain and for the factories is OPEX. Yes, I have some other topics that I would like to talk about, how the Innovation Fund can also play a role and other proposals that we have developed together with our members, but maybe I can stop here already.
Yeah, thank you. That's very good. Eunice, do you want to add something on the...
I can add.
Yes, on the, so where are we manufacturing in ocean energy, or at least in wave, in your case?
So on wave energy converters, I think you've seen, so our wave energy converter has two big pieces that is the buoy that you see on the outside, which is made out of composite materials and fiberglass. So that can be made wherever you're going to build the farm. So you can bring the factory, so it's a mobile cell that you bring to the location that you're building, but you use composites sourced in Europe. And then there's the power takeoff that it's made mostly out of steel. And that is set up, it's put together in Sweden, and our supply chain to all the pieces that go together to make the power takeoff are based in Europe. So we have suppliers all over Europe where we have built our first full-scale wave energy converter. We are now increasing our supply chain to build another 3 wave energy converters for a demonstrator, and also trying to already set up and start an industry together with our partners that have been helping us till now, and also making other partnerships so that we can continue to keep our supply chain based in Europe and grow an industry out of it.
Okay, very clear. Thank you. So I guess that's a bit of the landscape of where we are today, and where we want to go is a bit the next question. So you, Carmen and Victoria, you've mentioned different issues. Eunice, in the sector is new, so it's creating its own supply chain or using existing supply chains to a certain extent. What do you need in terms of policy actions specifically? And I want to split between maybe the Commission, which is going to be very targeted at EUSEW here, not necessarily, hopefully, and the Member States on the other side, because the competencies are different. And you mentioned OPEX and finance, and some of those competencies obviously rest with Member States. So again, maybe I'll start with you, Victoria and Louise.
On the wind energy sector side, where do we want to go? We want to go to the maximum, I would dare say. On terms of policy measures, as I said again, I think we are really in a key implementing stage, because there were quite a lot of very good things that have happened over the last 18 months. And the big challenge is basically that we keep the momentum going and that we critically scale up. That we scale up the deployment of wind energy, and that we scale up our ability to expand the factories that we have for wind components and turbines, and that we build the new ones that would be necessary for us to get to the very ambitious goals that we have. And I'm starting with the goals because having policy ambition does not necessarily equal that you would have a project realizing on the ground. And this is for us always the very first step. Basically the permitting of the projects. Because for many years we have been saying, and 2 years ago we still had 80 gigawatts of wind energy projects that were stuck somewhere in a permitting pipeline in Europe. And every gigawatt stuck in permitting is in essence business that doesn't go to the factories of companies like Louise's at ZF, and basically where the volume is probably not the maximum that it could have potentially been. Last year, we have already seen the Commission put out very ambitious measures. So the emergency regulation, which was on permitting simplification, the revision of the Renewable Energy Directive, which is calling on the member states to cut the permitting deadlines. And just because of these facts, we have already seen some of the big countries are starting more and more to permit these projects that were stuck. In France last year, we had 2.2 gigawatts that we managed to permit. In Germany, it was 5.7. So it has really been, I think, a very good first step in this this direction. The next step would be, especially on the permitting front, to digitalize these processes so that we can additionally cut the time that it takes for a project to basically realize on the ground. The second thing which I believe is important is, of course, auction design. And there are quite a few elements on auction design, a lot of which are, of course, tackled by ENSEA. But before we go to ENSEA, I think the importance has always been on the fact that we have needed to index the support mechanisms that were granted by these auctions. And this was also on the back of the fact that, of course, over the last 2 years, there has been a lot of bottlenecks, a lot of inflation. Raw material costs have increased quite significantly. So, of course, it has hurt also the business case of the different suppliers across the supply chain. We have seen a lot of countries right now indexing these auctions. So this has, I think, also been extremely welcomed by the industry and is certainly something that needs to move forward. But, of course, the biggest change would be exactly around how do we design the new rules for the procurement of renewable energy going forward? And this is where ENSEA steps in, because for the first time in European policy, we are moving away from a mechanism which only rewards the projects that are the lowest at cost, but we are now going to start rewarding also the value that they bring. And this is the criticality here. Our supply chain has a lot of value to bring to the European economy, as I mentioned previously. So basically here, we need to really distinguish between those elements that would be critical going forward for these industries. On the one side, having very clear pre-qualification rules, making sure that we have projects that correspond to the value that we have in the European Union for our energy security going forward, be it on cybersecurity, be it on responsible business conduct. This is extremely important. And then, of course, having the right elements in the award stage that can additionally make sure that our companies are rewarded in the right way. And last thing, and I finish on that, of course, we can go in more detail. I think it's also a question of financing, broadly speaking. Because, of course, we have seen a lot of movement there as well from the European funds. So if I think of the Innovation Fund, the different pots that were available for manufacturing have increased. We, of course, need to work a little bit on the design to make it fit absolutely for what we need. And basically, it's no longer about just looking for breakthrough innovation. This is really about rewarding incremental innovation, getting the scale up appropriately rewarded, but it's also about the different mechanisms that the member states have put in place. And I think there the recovery and resilience plans, as Louise was mentioning, have also played a role, and they have also helped the supply chain to recover. In conclusion, the only thing I would say is what we have observed over the last 6 months is that these positive first steps that we have seen have also allowed a lot of our supply chain companies to start either upgrading existing factories or even opening new ones. We have seen it with nacelles, with blades. We have seen it in the grid segment. We have seen it with offshore turbine foundations everywhere across Europe. It was in Poland, it was in Denmark, it was in the Netherlands. So it's really important, and this is why I'm saying the momentum needs to continue, the political will needs to continue, and if we have these right mechanisms, the industry follows.
Fantastic, thank you. Yeah, maybe one word.
Just to word from how it exemplifies on a company side. So really this permitting problem, what it does to us at the moment is that we have an excess of capacity that is unused, and really like the root of competitiveness is volume. If we don't have volumes, we cannot be competitive in Europe. So indeed, like all the points on permitting that Victoria said are extremely relevant for us. And then what we are seeing is that once the progress happens and we have the ramp up will come extremely fast. And then we have the opposite problem of we might have shortages. And the questions that companies are wondering is, first, can we be competitive as European companies? Like, do we have the right framework to be competitive in Europe? And that's exactly what she was mentioning on auction designs, for example, because auction design, they can help us create values on things like sustainability, cybersecurity, responsible corporate conduct that we do in Europe, but that at the moment don't find any economic value or little economic value, and that's very important for us. And then the second question that we are wondering is, will Europe be the right place to invest? And that's a very key question, and I think we have a very concrete case with our test and prototype center. I mean, this is a very strategic move from our company. We have the largest test and prototype center in the world, 30 megawatts, that should enable us to really design the product of the future here in Europe. And when we were looking for funding, it took us 1.5 years of knocking on every door to find some funding, and we did. So the region of Flanders financed us to the strategic transformation funds, but the level of funding is less than 5%. And when we are comparing externally, like with our in the international competition, this is far lower than what we can see elsewhere. So we can see that Europe has been the leader in driving the green transition, but now there is a race to funding, and here Europe is not the leader, and we need to see progress there.
Yeah. No, I'll get back to the funding question afterwards. But yeah, maybe move to Carmen. So permitting, auction design, rewarding value, financing for. Is it the same for you, same topics or different ones?
So indeed for us, we don't have such a big issue with the permitting side. We see how also the Net Zero Industry Act already gives, if there was an issue, what we do have, of course, it takes time to build a factory, but it's not a bottleneck for us. And already the Net Zero gives fast permitting for the solar project, so we welcome that very much. On the critical raw material side, that's also something that we welcome a lot, but indeed, Net Zero Industry Act is the thing that would solve the issue for keeping the manufacturers alive. And on that, also on the topic of auctions, of course, we have to make a distinction between award, pre-qualification. Here, we do think that it's crucial to have clear auction rules across the member states. We see how there's already some conversations taking place in France, Spain, Germany, Austria. Well, they're really ongoing now at the moment. I actually think Austria talked about this resilience criteria yesterday, and we see how some member states are really taking it serious. And the time is against us here, at least for solar. So it's crucial that we have these clear implementing acts so that member states can apply it. I'm not going to go into details at the moment because I think it might come. Also, I wanted to say sorry that I didn't give the floor to Francesca. But
yep,
maybe before going into her, since you were asking for measures at the member state level and at the European level, again, member state level, implementing act for the member states in net zero, and also TCTF rules so that they can actually be used by the companies, which is unfortunately not the case. And then at a European level, we can think about the Innovation Fund. We have some examples on how it works for solar. We have Trisan in Catania that belongs to Enel, the Enel Group, and that in 2022 was awarded with Innovation Fund. And thanks to that, they could start their project, which is running up to today. We will see what happens with the Futurasan project. Hopefully they will also make it thanks to the Innovation Fund. Yes, and then maybe we can think about other mechanisms, like we 1 year ago, by the way, there is announced already the solar manufacturing facility, which would be also helping through an auction for manufacturers so they can show and they can maybe via a joint venture participate in an auction that includes ESG criteria, resilience criteria, product quality criteria, and they would make their projects more competitive. Those are some of the ideas that we're thinking of briefly. Yes, but I'll just give the floor to Francesca.
Yeah, thank you. About the national support, I can add something maybe because in Italy, you know that there is Transizione 5.0 in Italian, I can say that. And we are waiting for the operational rules to apply that. But the things that we want to underline is that the subsidies need to be, yes, for the end users, but with attention to the supply chain actors. So yes, okay, it's okay to push citizens to buy European products and wait for them to arrive also in the solar sector, but with a view of what is behind. So now I would say that it will be progressively implemented, the European supply chain for solar sector. So yes, it's something important. And when I talk about OPEX support is because right in our proposal for the Innovation Fund, we really not struggling is maybe an hard work, but yes, it was not so easy to demonstrate the financial maturity of the project that we are sure of. But you need to be very strong in that for the evaluation. And the OPEX point is very important in a sector like ours, with the materials that are very. We try to have obviously a BOM, European BOM, also Italian in some part, but it's something that we really need.
Okay, thank you. And before going to you, Jacek, I will go to Eunice. How does it look your side? Like, what policy actions do you need? We had permitting, auctions, financing, raw materials, level playing field, I'll call it.
So for us, it's also very much based on financing and also on permitting. So for ocean energy to reach the first gigawatt by 2030, what we really need is to make sure that the projects can be implemented and that we have orders. So us as a supplier of technology, that we have order from a project developer, or we can be project developer in a location and have a firm commitment that the project is going to happen, so that we have a clear pathway in member states to have the permitting procedure in place, that we can easily go through it and have everything ready in place for a project developer to be secure enough to invest the money into building a farm. And then that will trickle down to supply chain, obviously, because as soon as we have a firm commitment on a project, then we can have the firm commitments on the supply chain to build all the machines and all the wave energy converters. And also, I guess, for other ocean energy like tidal will be a similar thing.
Yeah, indeed. If I can speak for Tidal myself, it's very similar in terms of finance. Tidal has a bit more experience with pilot farms in the water than Wave has. We've already set the first pilot farms in 2015, 2016, and are now looking at pre-commercial farms. But essentially, they all have the same issues when it comes to financing. Okay, well, I'm going to stay on the topic of financing for now. But before that, Jacek, my question to you is, how aware are you of all these problems within the Commission? And I assume that your unit, who is basically working on it, is very aware of it. But do you see it trickle towards other areas of the Commission, within DG ENER, on any other DGs? How does it work?
Well, yes, we are aware. We are often in contact and cooperate closely.
You haven't come see us, so you're contact with the others,
there are
but
still some
not
gaps
us.
we have to fill.
Okay.
But no, I think it becomes a central topic for the Commission as a whole. If you look at DG ENER, until recently, they have really been focused entirely on deployment, not looking at supply side issues, and that changed a lot. I mean, they are co-owners of the Net Zero Industry Act with us, and so had to, in a way, adopt that more holistic view. And I believe that under the next Commission, this will be even more the case. Industrial policy, ensuring a level playing field of industrial actors in the EU vis-à-vis their competitors elsewhere will be a central topic. And just to, if I may comment on a few things that I heard, I think I agree that, I think Victoria referred to that a lot of good things have been agreed recently. I absolutely agree with that. The first priority should be implementation. I was in a conference recently where I heard, for example, Marko Mensik, the boss of Cefic, the chemicals industry, saying that just for his industry in the next 2 years there will be more than 60 delegated acts in the pipeline. So, and we are at a moment in the political cycle, where there will be a request for new ideas, but we have to make sure that this request for new ideas does not come at the expense of really focusing on implementation. And that concerns the Commission, but also Member States. And for Member States, we, for example, have this technical support instrument, several hundred million of euros available for supporting them to speed up permitting procedures, run auctions more effectively, and so on. So it would be important that Member States make use of that. Then, in terms of new ideas, OPEX, we hear it every other day from the industry, but of course this is very problematic, as you know. DG Competition has issues with that because it's very distortive, and because we are structured in the EU as we are, some Member States would have more power to distort the market than others. Of course, if you do it at EU level, there's less distortion. That's why, if you would have a proper program for industry decarbonization at EU level, including some form of OPEX, for example, in the form of fixed premiums, that could be a way forward. And that should be part of the discussions on financing under the next MFF. And also in terms of the reduction of the costs that industry has, like for wafers and ingots, for example, that it's so energy intensive. If you look at the recent communication from the Commission on the outcome of this clean transition dialogues, there's a reference to the need to look at the industry cost, maybe lowering through lower tariffs that energy intensive industry would have to pay for electricity. So I think this will be part of the debate. So maybe I stop here.
Okay, great. Well, I have a follow-up question for you. Is because you mentioned distortion, and I mean, for example, for us, we build very small projects. I mean, Core Power's biggest project is 12 megawatts, 5 currently.
Yeah, so now in Portugal, the demonstrator is 1.2 megawatt, but our
Yeah.
our first pre-commercial farm is 5 megawatts
Yes.
in Ireland, and then we're looking at another location with, again, 5 megawatts, and then the other location that we have in mind in Portugal is 10 megawatts.
Okay.
So we're starting with small farms.
Exactly. So, example at hand, my point is 5 megawatt, not really distorting the internal European market, is it? So, and this is just an example for us because we're small, but if I'm looking at the other sectors, some of the innovations they might want financed under the Innovation Fund or under an OPEX scheme might also have a minimal impact right now in themselves on the distortion of the market, but have a huge impact down the line on the actual capacity of Europe to keep those technologies at home. So I know you're not DG Competition, and if we have somebody from DG Competition in the room, feel free to raise your hand and I'll give you the floor. But like for us, I know it's been a fight for us to go there and tell them, listen, I want money for 1 megawatt. Do not tell me that this is distorting the market. It's rubbish. So how can we make sure that we're not crashing the market, but on the other side, we still have new ideas that are being financed a way that China or the US will finance them? And maybe two points on that. In ocean energy, we received 120 million recently from Horizon Europe Innovation Fund. In the US, 100 million per year is what they've invested the last 5 years. This is the first time we get this much money. And I was talking in September with the Chinese tidal manufacturer, and he was telling me that for his next farm of 100 megawatts, he was getting the same conditions as for his prototype. And those conditions are 50% of capex paid and the 320 euros feed-in tariff per megawatt hour. So extremely good condition, and brings me back to the financing question, competitiveness questions that we had before. So if you could comment on that, and then I'll give you back the floor on competitiveness.
No, I don't have anything very intelligent to say, I'm afraid, on that. But I can tell you that, in a way, with the Net Zero Industry Act, we are playing catch-up, Yep. We are trying to make sure that we, have industrial excellence in those technologies where we are losing market share and where we were pioneers in terms of innovation 15 or 20 years ago, wind and solar.
Yep.
And maybe it does not focus so much the Net Zero Industry Act and my team, for example, on what do we do to make sure that the technologies which are at TRL 6, 7 today, in 5 years, 10 years, are translated into industrial opportunities here in Europe. I mean, I think there have been attempts in the Commission to address those issues, like the European Innovation Council aims at doing those things through appropriate financing, but I'm sure there are ways to improve it. But I'm not an expert there.
Okay, that's great. I'm not meaning to put you on the spot. It's been very clear from the previous speakers that what you've done with the NZIA is something that needs to be more streamlined and implemented. Going back to finance, and this links to two questions I had on Slido, which were around the fact that how do we make sure that your renewables in Europe are actually cost competitive with outside? Is finance most of that answer? Is it environmental regulation outside? Is it trade barriers? Difficult topic. Please comment on that. We'll start with Victoria, maybe. Or Francesca, if you want to go first, go ahead.
Let's go on. So we're going to go
So polite.
That's a question that we can tackle even in a separate panel. You know, we can fill the time, but
Yeah.
I think it's a combination of everything somehow that we have discussed so far. Because at the end of the day, us remaining competitive also means that we need to have all of these right regulatory policy frameworks, from the permitting to the auction design to the financing. You know, it's one thing in a go, and I would say here it's increasingly important that we continue with this dialogue that we are doing, especially also with the European Commission. As Jacek mentioned, we have really had a lot of conversations. And it's good also to see that on certain points, the policy is really adjusting to what the market realities are and what actually the players in the market really need. Because again, just if I look at, on the top of my head, an example, on financing, you know, until recently, the Innovation Fund was not really allowed to actually give financing for scaling up existing manufacturing sites, because we were only looking at breakthrough innovation. Now it's no longer the case. So we are adjusting because we just need different things to make sure that we remain relevant at the global level. I don't know, Lise, if...
Yes, thank you. I mean, what I would say from the case of ZF Wind Power is that, I mean, until recently, the answer was always innovation. How to stay competitive in terms of price, that was always innovation. So, I mean, in our sector, that's the torque density that was important. So basically, the importance is that we were continuing producing the highest output turbine out there while cutting costs and so on. And that was true for a time. But the problem is, like, in Europe, the volumes, they have not increased, whereas in China, they are fulfilling their objective in advance of their 5 years plan. And that's really where the difficulty comes from. Like, at some points, volume is key to keep competitiveness. And so in Europe, the solution number one, of course, we need all those tools, but the solution number one is still volume for Europe to be not a fast follower, but still like the leader in that case. And I think that should also be our message here.
So the pledge by COP countries to triple renewable installations is key for you to reach that. Yeah, okay. And I believe China is installing what, double the amount of turbines we install in gigawatts, or triple by now, roughly?
I wouldn't have the number on the top of my head.
Okay, that's fine. All right, something like that. Great. Yeah, Francesca, Carmen.
If I think of about our sector, I think it will be not tomorrow. So we need to start somewhere. It will be very useful to have financing and also to foster investments to our projects that are a lot in the pipeline, ready to start working on their new building or increasing what they have now. Another thing is awareness, I think, of the end users again, because in Italy, I take this example because the subsidy I was talking about earlier, it's something that helps you to pay a little bit more for the panels that is made in EU. So, but to do that, we need the market, the suppliers to this kind of technology, and then we can start to recreate all the supply chain that we want to have in Europe. So yes, let's start by financing that.
Okay.
Yes, and maybe also...
Yeah, it's on.
Can you hear? Okay. To complete and maybe also to address the question.
The question.
Yes. So the answer to the question is no. At least we don't believe in trade measures. We think they could be completely destructive for solar. Indeed, there's an interesting 30 gigawatt target in the Net Zero Industry Act across the whole supply chain, and we hope we will reach it. We're working for that. But there are also many other targets in other regulations. So we can think for the moment on RED, for example, 42.5% of renewable electricity. You cannot reach that without electricity, under the RED, Renewable Energy Directive. You cannot reach that without solar. So if trade is going to kill the solar market, then the answer is no to trade. Voilà.
Okay, that's very clear. I mean, yeah, the trade-off is obviously we still need to do our energy transition. So if we triple the cost of solar, that's not going to work very well. Eunice,
So for wave, we have a very clear target so that we can reach 600 megawatts installed for wave energy to become competitive with other renewable energy technologies. So up until we reach that 600 megawatts and we have an actual industry that can provide our wave energy converters, then we need mechanisms of support, innovation fund grants, other type of grants, and also some kind of revenue support to make the first pre-commercial farms something that it's viable for an investor to actually build a farm and actually start this 600 megawatts. So, and from the 600 megawatts onwards, then the wave energy is competitive.
A follow-up question to you then. China is not yet super present in the wave. They have built devices. As far as we've seen, they're not extremely efficient. They've copied some of our devices. They've even copied the color. Very nice of them. So this way we can really tell. But the US is more the threat when it comes to wave. Or maybe for you, is it an opportunity? Because we've seen the US Department of Energy come to the annual conference for ocean energy and say, hey guys, we got 100 million per year. You want to install your technology in our country, you get a subsidy. This is not something that's very easy to do in Europe. You can't even build in the UK or install in UK waters under certain schemes. So what's your feeling on that? Is the US, from your perspective as a company, is it an opportunity? And is it, as a result, a threat for European manufacturing in wave energy?
I think wave energy needs competition. We actually require competition to exist, so actually a market exists. So I think before looking into competition, we need to actually build a market. So I think it is an opportunity, and also if there's something developing in the US, it can put some pressure on us to move faster and actually make something about wave energy in Europe together, and then maybe have some synergies and have some collaborations, because the US, at least for wave energy, has very interesting locations.
Yes, it does. Very, very good resource over there, as with the rest of the world. All right, I had an interesting question, because you mentioned innovation before. There is an interesting question here on, is there too much focus on innovation instead of stability of production? Is it something that's a problem for you, or on the contrary, we need to continue to innovate, but how much? Francesca, yeah?
But it's not an answer, actually, because in solar sector, innovation is there. So we don't know what we will reach. We know that maybe we have a roof in terms of efficiency, but it's really changing very, very fast. So yes, I think we also need to think about what innovation is, because also writing this famous proposal for our innovation fund application, innovation needs to have a TRL very high to be industrialized.
Yes.
But is innovation something that is not yet in Europe, but somewhere else? Yes. This is a question that we had in our mind. So I think innovation is very important. R&D is very important, but it needs to be balanced.
Okay, yeah, very clear. Eunice, do you want to add something on that? Or?
Well,
Victoria, you've more or less answered the question before, but if you want to take the floor again now.
On the wave sector, we are very much on the innovation ramp. So we're still with very high learning rates, and we're still on the disruptive innovation stage that we're trying to make the machine work in a way that it's actually energy efficient. So there's a lot of points still to improve on disruptive innovation.
And each machine is different from the previous one, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We hope to actually now get to something that we can build roll out as a commercial product.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Victoria? Or?
Yeah, just again to say, innovation is very important. It will continue. But again, just at the current moment, it's really about scaling up.
Yeah.
Okay? Scaling up, getting the volumes out, getting the technology out. It's really the important thing.
Okay, yeah, very clear. We still have about 25 minutes. I have one more question on Slido, but if there are people in the audience who want to just take the floor and ask a question, I have one over there. Don't hesitate. Yeah, we have a roaming mic. Yeah, you can get it.
Thanks very much. This is a question which is more directly directed to the PV representatives on the panel. My name's Greg Arrowsmith and I'm Secretary-General of EUREC.
Yeah, please state your name and affiliation. That will help everybody understand whether you're trying to crash this session or actually helping. Go ahead.
And I've detected that the panel is very enthusiastic about the Net Zero Industry Act and especially about the non-price criteria that can be applied under Article 26. But I have a concern that these are not going to be as useful for some sectors as they are for others. And I think that PV could be one of those sectors that isn't able to take full advantage of it. And this is because there's another part of the Article 26 that says that member states only need to apply these criteria if they think that the result of the auction will be that they don't add more than 15% to the cost or to the bids compared to an auction which is run without the criteria. And so I have a question which is first of all to Francesca, which is, given your company's experience both with China and with the EU, can you confirm that there is a price gap which is bigger than 15% now between most of the modules on the EU market which come from China and that which they could be manufactured at if they were made in Europe? And then the second question, which is perhaps a bit more to Carmen, in that case, should we manage our expectations a bit about the usefulness of Article 26?
All right, go ahead.
Yes, yes, I confirm. It's not so easy to have an idea because the BOM from Europe is not so easy to create by now. As I said, the sector is trying to rebuild its supply chain in Europe. So now we are very, we need to work on it. Yes, it will be. We will work on the non-price criteria and then trust them. And as I said, maybe we can work on the awareness of these non-price criteria in the buyers. So yes, we need to work very fast before the entry into operation of the Net Zero Industry Act about auctions.
And maybe to complete, so indeed, for the moment, the Net Zero Industry Act sets minimum targets, and there's two steps now. First of all, the implementing act that is now at the making. If I'm not mistaken, it should enter to force by the end of this year. And then there's also the step of member states. And we see how there's a difference between member states very heavily supporting solar and setting minimum targets that very much help solar, and some others that they rely on other technologies. And that's some of the advocacy that we're also doing, saying let's please all support solar. Regardless the other technologies that you rely on as well in your member state, because in the end, net zero is minimum requirements for them to be even more or less strict. So yeah, I mean, I'm positive because I see some debates now, even without the implementing act and without the net zero in practice through auctions, because public procurement will enter soon. So that's why, and also because in general I'm optimistic. But let's see. Yeah, I work closely with many factories. I know how much they're struggling. That's why we try to work with other stuff like the Innovation Fund, the state aid. Anyway. Yeah.
Yes.
Jacek, yeah, you wanted to?
Yeah. It's just only to talk about again, about the Italian example of these subsidies for European panels in the for industry that work on an efficiency of their building or equipment with the Industry 5.0, if I'm correct. We saw that they stopped buying panels to wait for these subsidies. So yes, they are aware of the increase of the price if you buy something from Europe, but they are waiting for the application law of these incentives. So something is moving also in Italy.
Jacek, yeah, go ahead, please.
Thanks. Just to complement, so...
No, I think you shut it off. It was on.
Yeah? All right. So for auctions, the 15% that you refer to do not refer to the cost of the technology itself, but of the support scheme as a whole, which, relates also to the cost of land and the cost of maintenance and so on. So this it will not be as easy for member states to opt out from that as it would have been if it would relate only to the cost of the turbine. For public procurement, there's also a cost safeguard, which is 20%, and there it relates only to the cost of technology. So my point here is that these are, at least for auctions, it's more difficult to opt out than it might look at first sight. That being said, yeah, we cannot, I think, compete with China if, for example, as for solar, the cost of EU-made panels is 3 times what China produces. And so I think it's right that we have these cost safeguards. We hear from the solar industry that with these gigafactories that are now being put online, notably in France, they will really reduce significantly the cost of production. On the other hand, we also hear that the current trend on the world markets for batteries and solar with the vast overcapacity of Chinese production will not persist for, I don't know, 20 years, maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe 4. So hopefully that price gap will narrow. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so the next question was a bit to go back to China. How do we ensure that we have a level playing field? I mean, China is the biggest example, let's face it, but do you see the NZIA having the full picture, or do you need other things beyond it? Is it more at member state level again? Maybe that question, but like, we want more competition, but we want competition under the same rules, which is not the case at the moment. Like finance, I was mentioning earlier as an example for our industry is very clear, but it's the same for everybody. IP obviously has been a problem in the past, still is a very strong problem for any type of innovations. Labor laws, environmental laws. So yeah, question to the panel: how do we secure a level playing field? I know it's not an easy one, so you don't have to give the full answer and have the whole solution.
So indeed, I can think maybe of ESG criteria, strong ESG criteria, innovation criteria, so other points or topics that we can show our strength on. Again, we don't believe trade will solve any situation, but we see that maybe foreign subsidy relation to specific public procurement, while we're in favor of any kind of measure that the Commission would look forward in specific cases, into very specific cases, not in general base. But that is more a defensive measure. We think we can be even more strong, even more resilient for long term, not for small term, via exactly ESG criteria, innovation, and any other.
I think in any case, what the European Commission has tried to do since last year, including with the EUSEW, but not only with that, is exactly how do we capture the fact that, of course, we have a lot of European companies who have invested year after year after year in developing their manufacturing capacity under certain rules, and how do we make sure that if we have foreign competitors who are coming to our domestic market, that they play by the same rules, right? Yeah. This is the whole point. And from that perspective, what we have seen, first of all, as political will, which was already spelled out by the Commission President in the wind power package back in 2023, and which afterwards was also written down in the Net Zero Industry Act, again, is a first step, because we basically want to ensure that this bar, which is a minimum that our companies are already fulfilling in Europe, so, for instance, indeed, responsible business conducts or innovation, what have you there, this is the same rules that others will need to basically abide by as and when they come to our market. And this is very important. So, again, the importance of pre-qualification criteria, I think, especially when we go to public procurement or to renewable energy auctions, as is in our case, is here very important. And this is really the very, very minimum that everybody needs to observe in Europe. So it's one way, it's a first step. But there, of course, would be other ways, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you. Eunice or Jacek, do you want to?
I mean, we have plenty of instruments now to to aim at a level playing field. We have the CBAM, of course, which will start applying soon. We have the Net Zero Industry Act. We have the Foreign Subsidies Regulation. We have the International Procurement Instrument. We have the Forced Labor Regulation. We have the Corporate Social Due Diligence Regulation or Directive. So, you know, again, it's a matter now, above all, of implementation, because we have a good framework, I think.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, Louise?
Yes, thank you. I completely agree with what my colleague Victoria said. I think just from a perspective of a company, I mean, China is indeed a complex question. So as a global company wanting to be competitive globally, we have also footprint in China. And we rely also on suppliers from China. What we are seeing, however, and what is somehow difficult is the difference in the growth of our production capacities. So we have one competitor's Flunder in Europe, which is roughly the same size as ZF Wind Power, and we have one competitor, NGC, in China. 3 years ago, we were all roughly the same size, competing for number one every year. And over the last 3 years, our competitor in China, NGC, has doubled its capacity by just constructing one new plant in Jinhu. And that is the kind of situation that we are seeing. So in China, we are seeing now more than 70% of the global capacity being built. And we see that they are able to deliver for the whole world, whereas they have a difficult economic situation at home. So this is the complex thing. In the same time, in the wind sector, we have also dependencies in certain places that are well-known, permanent magnet and so on. And so I think that's why we need to make use of the tools that are available, indeed, to ensure level playing field. This is what we are asking for. And in that, I want to react also to what Jacek was saying. One point that is important and that I'm trying to raise in every panel and every conference that I'm in is indeed the carbon border adjustment mechanism is an important new mechanism. Unfortunately, it's only covering raw materials or low level of transformation. And for components like gearboxes, this is extremely relevant because we are using hundreds of tons of steel, and therefore we are covered by the CBAM. We will be affected, but our competitors who are producing gearbox in China, they will not have to pay those carbon prices. And that's where we think we need to make sure in Europe that we have a level playing field.
Okay, thanks. Eunice, I wanted to go back to you on the back of what Louise was saying. So she says they have a foothold in China. You said at the moment 100% of our supply chain is European. Going forward, and as the wave and tidal sector, it's fairly the same from that perspective. As they grow and as they expand, do you see a reason to go to other countries for some of your components, or will you stay in Europe?
So our aim is to stay in Europe. So that's what we're aiming for. And a lot of our suppliers that we're using now to build the first prototype is trying to engage them to increase their production and see if they are interested in increasing their production capacity and having their commitment on actually being our suppliers for a long term in trying to in being able to have this capacity. And a lot of our supply chain is small pieces that can all be put together, that can come from countries in Europe, from other industries, and trying to keep our production in Europe. And also something that it's important for us is our life cycle analysis of our projects. So we want to make sure that every piece of material that comes into our machine has a low carbon footprint, and that we are actually producing energy, and we are also the machines that we make to produce that energy have also a low carbon footprint, and that we have a life cycle analysis of our product from cradle to grave.
Okay, awesome. Well, I want to finish with implementation because I think it's as Greg flagged, very strong support for the NZIA and overall for the number of legislation that have been passed the last 3 years at European level. The news from Sunday/Monday shows that maybe it will be a bit more difficult to implement going forward. with a number of political forces appearing who have maybe less of an interest in understanding the way the energy industry is working and where it's going, or maybe just less experience with it, I don't know. But like, so I'll start with you, Jacek, in the last 10 minutes we have, and if there are questions on the floor. How can we help you maybe as industry, help you work with the member states or convince the member states to implement the NZIA in the best way possible? Do we need to convince the member states, in your opinion? You must have had a lot of interactions with them in the making of that legislation. What's your view on that?
No, I think the industry has a central role in this. I mean, we're doing this for the industry, for the EU economy.
Yep.
When we work now, we start implementing the Net Zero Industry Act. I see that some member states are already seizing the opportunity, you know, and there will be some competition between member states for getting these projects developed on their territories. And I see some member states like France, Italy, for example, that are already seizing that opportunity. Many other member states are more in the kind of waiting mode. And my fear a little bit is that, you know, if the benefits of all this are not spread more or less evenly, the aims, the objectives of this policy will be undermined. So, and as Victoria said, I mean, currently you said 250 suppliers spread across the single market. So it's important that you are in touch with the authorities and encourage them to make full use of that framework. Yeah, as simple as that.
Okay, so more discussions with the national authorities. Do you want to react, all of you, to this topic? How do we ensure we implement the NZIA? Do you already have contact at national level that are very positive about the text or not?
I think the implementation of the NZIA, of course, will be ongoing and will be preoccupying our minds for quite some time still, because even though we have the headline framework that is now signed by the European Parliament and also by the member states, there are, of course, as we said, a lot of nitty-gritty details that we are still detailing together with the industry, with the Commission, with the member states also in the implementing and the delegated act. So it's just a starting point, and I think we'll have to see how it progresses going forward. One thing which I would add on the member state side, which came to my mind as we were speaking, is also I would be very keen to see the member states' commitment on competitiveness of the renewable energy industries in their 2030 national energy and climate plans, which are currently submitted to Brussels. And I'm saying this because 5 years ago, when the PERS plans came in, the chapter on competitiveness was more or less blank, at least for the wind energy sector. There were only 3 countries that had really thought about competitiveness for their industries, that had a plan with the right policy measures going forward. And I think it's really important, considering the very different geopolitical context in which we're in, that this time around, everybody has filled in this chapter in a very detailed way.
Very good. 3 countries, Denmark, Germany, Spain?
Yeah, more or less.
Yeah, okay, good. Competitiveness, NECPs. NECP, obviously, we're still waiting for some of the final drafts to come. The Commission has made some good comments on renewables and on the targets. I think even at the target level, they're not adding up to what they should be adding to. And I do agree with you, Victoria, that I think this understanding that this is a competitive industry, or an industry that can stay or become competitive is a bit something we need to maybe try and communicate better. Carmen, you want to?
Yes, so indeed, we think that the net zero can be the signal that everybody was waiting for, but now it's time to make it real. We are already working on our own implementing act for Article 26 and also for Article 25 on public procurement and Article 28 on other forms of public intervention. So basically how to help the Commission and the Member States apply. We're happy that we were approached because we have some national associations as well within Solar Power Europe, and they're already wondering how they can support their Member States. So we will work on that, even if we're already doing it in the coming months. Yes, so yeah, hoping that this will make the difference. And maybe just to reflect on what you said before on this new scenario in Europe, we're at the moment having a Green Deal paper in Solar Power Europe, and we're looking for signatories with other colleagues from other associations on how important it is to make the Green Deal happen. So if you can sign up for it, voilà, maybe we'll get convinced the institutions.
Yes, very much needed at the moment. Eunice, you're in touch with the Swedish government a bit, with the Portuguese government a bit, Irish government?
Yes, and for us, what is more important is to have clear targets also for the 2030 commitments, so that we have wave and tidal clear targets, so that we can signal then the countries that we develop projects, the investors that invest in projects, and also the supply chain behind it, that the projects are going to happen. There is a firm commitment for wave projects to go forward, and that they can develop their capacities to support that.
Okay, that's great. Any final questions from the audience? Sorry, yes, go ahead.
Thank you so much.
My
name is Alexander. I'm working for a solar APC company which have assets in Ukraine and also in Poland and other project in Europe. But it's up to you. It's a question. Do you think that Ukraine now can be a good place for localization, some production facility for renewables? Why I ask you? Because now, okay, everyone know that now war in Ukraine and Ukraine resist crazy empire, but due to also your support, resist this crazy empire. But at that time, Ukraine lose more than half generation facility, and now have huge need to recover as soon as possible. If we already choose this way, green transition, decarbonization, another, no, I hope and cross fingers that it will be renewables, more renewables. But now, where we can buy this equipment? If we speak about each solar station, if we speak about wind station, storage facility, every company it come from China.
Yeah.
If you buy some Europeans one, it will be a not competitive option for us in our condition. But if huge European producers draw attention to this growing market, now we have needs 5 gigawatt solar, 5 gigawatt wind. It's as minimum. It's for now. That's why maybe it's reasonable to look through Ukraine, and Ukraine, new member of European Union and NATO. Maybe it's a good investment. It allows future and safe of European Union. Thank you so much for your support.
Thank you. So quick question maybe to those, maybe more the industry side. Is Ukraine a target country? Will Ukraine be a target country when the war is over? Would you consider investing there with manufacturing, or how do you see things? Or do you have, you're waiting to see what's going to happen?
Don't be afraid, because huge Denmark producer already made agreement with some private Ukrainian company and have some contract for more than 300 of megawatts. It's for the start. It's not far from the bottom line, but they believe in Ukraine.
Let's let our panelists see whether this is already a topic that is being considered or thought about.
Not yet, really, but it was something that we need to see in the future. Why not? Why not? But now it's early to talk about that, but why not?
And maybe if I can complete, I think this actually sums very well the panel, because we need to make European products competitive, so you can use them and you can have a competitive price in the market. So thanks for the question and for being here.
No comments? Jacek, you want to comment? Yeah?
No, just to say, because I'm not an expert in energy policy, but you're a member of energy community, right? Along with a number of other countries. And if you look, for example, at Serbia, they are becoming a major, supplier for Europe also in the battery segment. So I think Ukraine has huge potential, and I know that there's a big willingness here to support that. Under the Net Zero Industry Act, we have also this notion of net zero partnerships with third countries. We have not explored yet what it concretely means, but surely this is something we have to work on.
Thank you. Thank you to our speakers. Thank you for coming. I mean, we're reaching the end of the event. So in conclusion, I would say that from the panel, I hope it's very clear that we can have a competitive renewable industry in Europe at different levels. It does require a number of policy frameworks, policy actions, some of which have already been put forward, some of which need to be better implemented. Just to lift back a few, permitting, so making sure that we can go there quickly and that an investor doesn't need to wait 8 years for a project to actually happen, where he could just put his money twice in 2 other projects, 4 years long in other countries. The question of really whether the EU is the right place to invest, we see already as in our sector as ocean energy with very early stage project as absolutely paramount. Like we are talking to people who invest in wind in Australia, who invest in solar in the US or in South Africa. So is Europe the right place to invest? So permitting, auction designs, continue the work on that so that we make sure that we actually have good design that enables projects to go forward, enables companies to make a return and investors to make a return when they invest in the projects. Rules for procurement and financing, maybe as last key point, really make sure that we have a level playing field across the board for all of these topics, and make sure that we can continue develop our energy industry much faster than we are currently developing it, because from all the reports that have been published from ARENA, the IEA and the Commission lately, it's very clear that we need to do much more, much faster in terms of deployment for the energy security of Europe. So thank you very much for all of that. Thank you to our speakers. And see you at the drinks.